Now, we're going to open up to questions now. I've been taking a few notes, and just for me, a couple of takeaways. So, for example, an important point I think Michelle made was about the heat island effect. Interestingly enough, the Tree Veneration Society was actually invited to Bankstown Council to do a similar thing as what we've done here, because of the problems of heat island effect out there, where you have so many of these very, very large houses but no garden, no trees. And of course now they're having lots of problems with how hot it is getting. And of course, what better than planting trees than turning on an air conditioner? We're much better off cooling our houses with trees. So that's very important. Also, I was going to mention, you also talked about the Cooper Park, and one of the things we actually had some international guests here recently from Europe, and they were amazed at how many mini forests, in a way, we have in Sydney. I mean, you could call Cooper Park like a mini forest, and we have a lot of that in Sydney. So we are actually very lucky in many parts of Sydney with the amount of trees and plants that we do have. So yes, the importance of street trees and parks, and of planting trees, keeping trees, so that we don't have the urban heat island effect apart from anything else. Then a couple of notes I made with Professor Summerall. Helping trees save the planet, of course, is resilience, and how the importance of these seed banks that they've produced out at Mount Annan. I'm sure all of us here get really desperate when we hear about extinction and things becoming extinct, whether they be plants or animals. And how can we... So when I hear that certain seeds are being protected, and not only protected but also researched in such a way so that they can be resilient for the future, because the future under climate change, and I was very pleased to hear Brett use human-induced climate change. That's what we're dealing with now, that we have to have plants that are resilient for the future, for a future under climate change where it'll be hotter and drier and who knows what else. So definitely the seed bank, the protection and storage for our future is really important. The Research Centre for Ecosystems and Resilience, so important. What the work that our scientists are doing at Botanic Gardens under Professor Summerall is so essential for our future. So we thank you for that. And then David, of course, lots of takeaways. Of course, he's done so much work with dieback research, revegetation, planting trees on a very large scale, greening Australia. And I loved his Digby dieback meets Theresa Green. And of course, you must have a look if you have the time at some of his comics. They're really brilliant. So I think the idea of bringing some humour into this world, which is sometimes hard to find humour in, is a great, because we need to be positive. We need to feel as though there is a sense of hope. So, yeah, using performance for change and evoking indignation about degradation. I think that's an important takeaway too. We should be indignant about the degradation that's occurring on our planet. And of course, our wonderful first speaker, Uncle Dean Kelly, and one word I mentioned that for me I came away with was that sense of respect. So respect each other, respect the land that we live on, and the fact that old trees keep giving back to the land, so are respected. So the notion that something that is old, we tend to live in a society where old things are not so respected. So we certainly need to respect our old trees. I'd love to hear more about trees are us upside down. I know there are cultures who talk about upside down trees and the importance of that, but I'd love to hear more about that. And learning to sit in silence next to an old tree. So some wonderful takeaways, I think, from all of our speakers. So I would like to open up the floor now to questions from anyone in the audience.
With Cooper Park, is that a completely protected bit of green area in Sydney. Is there any way that it could become smaller, and how did it come into being?
Do my best. I'm not a good historian, but it was created as a park back in 18 something or other. So a lot of the work that happened in the park in terms of it being turned in, it was called originally something like a pleasure ground. So it had a lot of planted trees actually. It's not like a completely natural landscape. So there's a lot of stonework through there, stone steps and planted trees from northern Australia. So it's not a completely natural environment. However, it's still very beautiful whether the plants are native or not. It's still protected. So it is heritage listed as a park. So it's got quite some extra layers of protection because of that heritage listing. Definitely a very, very highly valued piece of land by our community in terms of urban green space. And I think all what's happened with COVID recently means that all of our green spaces are like gone up a few notches in terms of value for the community. So they're all, that was a good thing for our community going, oh, I haven't been here for a long time. This is fantastic. Isn't it great? We need more. So there's a lot of positive pressure because of that.
Question here?
Yeah, thank you to all the speakers for just a great, very varied perspectives. But this is just a question for Brett. I've noticed that in North Bondi, a lot of the very large Banksia and Tegucigalpa are dying. And I'm wondering if there's a reason behind this, or if you've done, Botanic Gardens is doing any research.
We have had a few samples come in of particularly integrifolias, some serratas, less likely serratas, but some Banksia marginatas too. The marginatas are probably more from South Sydney Council rather than the suburbs. We've not picked up any pathogens or diseases or pest problems with them. We think it's a combination of the changes in environmental conditions between the long period of the drought and the inundation with extensive periods of rainfall. It was funny, I had the Tanya Plibisek asked me the same question the other day at one of the functions at the gardens. I think it's a combination of the two things happening, the drought period going into the very wet period, and the plants just weren't able to cope with the changes in aeration in the root zone, and that's had a negative impact. Yeah.
Yes, the back.
Thank you, everybody. And I just wanted to take up your time because I know you're all fanatic tree lovers. And whilst Council has pointed out COVID is making more people venerate trees in green space, the recent national park development pressures for this area, Middlehead, Southhead in particular, Nelson Park, Strickland House, further afield is very much present, and I would just, if everyone could take the time to go to a petition which is closing in 2 weeks' time, and it's southheadwale.org, and you can just get it on your phone. It would be great to click through to state government level, calling for a restricted vehicle access, and whilst all the specialists are here, I don't think it's too much of an imposition. I hope I haven't taken up the room time to ask such a thing because I know you agree, and I appreciate you giving us the energy. There are many people in this room who have been working a long time.
Does anyone want to respond? No? I'm not 100% sure what the petition was for, stopping vehicle.
Thank you. 5-6 weeks ago, a master plan was adopted for Southhead National Park. And with that is some infrastructure bill proposals for new roads flying up between Defence and Lady Bay Beach. And development precincts within the national park. And so what can we do? It's been adopted, but we can keep the pressure up on state government to call for restricted vehicle access and if that proposed increase in vehicles, because we all know where that leads
Is that
to.
like Nielsen Park?
Nelson Park is at draft master plan stage
Right.
in Strickland House, so everybody be as involved as you can in their consultation over the next year. Southhead is further along, and I don't think it's too late, because I think there are a lot of good people. Hopefully it's not too late, but some of the stuff in the master plan goes ahead. But if we can, the link is on southheadwhale.org. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we'd all much rather breathe the oxygen coming from trees in national parks than the fumes from cars. So maybe any of you who are interested in this might like to speak to our speaker a bit later. Do we have any other comments or questions from the audience?
Actually, mainly for Michelle, I guess. Is there any kind of a get-together ever of councils across Greater Sydney area to discuss the issue of tree covering, protection, habitat protection?
Yes, basically. There are like plans that get made at like a Sydney regional level. So there's sort of like the Greater Sydney plans, and they have layers of canopy and biodiversity discussions within those high-level plans. And then our teams network in different ways. So there's a lot of online networks now where we have like a speaker talking about good work that one of the groups is doing, for example, and anyone can jump online and listen into what's happening. So there's quite a lot of kind of collaboration and networking of what's happening amongst our different teams. Yeah.
Before I forget, because I did forget at the beginning, I needed to thank Woollahra Council because they provided us with some funding, which has helped with this event. As you can imagine, it's a large event. And also Bondi Wash, who, in fact, it's thanks to Bondi Wash that we were able to have the symposium. So very big thank you to those two, Woollahra Council and Bondi Wash. If there aren't, I mean, I'm sure there are lots of more questions and the conversation can continue. The gallery is apparently open till 5, is that correct? So if you haven't seen the exhibition, please make a point and go and have a look at all the work. As I said, there is information about each artist. The information sheet, I think, is on the front desk. And then we actually thought we'd like to continue on ourselves, so we were going to go down to continue the conversation to, what's the name of the place? The Sheaf. The Sheaf. The pub. So if anyone would like to join us down at the Sheaf, the pub down the road, I mean, we would have had a bit of a celebration here, but unfortunately the gallery closes at 5, so we thought we'd continue on down at the Sheaf. But we'd certainly love to hear from all of you anyway, and continue the conversation and continue the good work.
So I'd like to thank you all so much for coming. On your way out, would you, by the exit to the door, there's a QR code and there's one outside the door. It's a very short survey, it helps us with evaluation. And yeah, if you click that, it will ask you what you thought of the exhibition and what you thought of the events. That would be great. So it's just a tick box exercise. So thanks very much.
Yeah, no, please do give us some feedback, because it's really, really essential, as you can imagine, apart from anything else, for if we ever apply for funding again, we need this feedback. So please do, that'd be great. So thank you everyone for coming, and hopefully we'll see some of you down at the Sheaf, but otherwise we'll see you again.